Our guest today is Mayor Hollies Winston, leader of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, the sixth largest city in the state with nearly 90,000 residents. Mr. Mayor, let's talk about the growing pains of a smaller city. I'm certain the fireworks are similar to larger neighbors of Minneapolis and St. Paul, where there are even fireworks in the city council from time to time. More recently, a council member took issue with you and four council members moving to censure him. What's behind the censure of Councilman Boyd Morrison, if you're free to speak about it?
I am free to speak about it. I think people have to look at this from um, I know our city council, the vast majority of us look at it from a governance perspective. So, it's not all politics with us. Much of this has to do with protecting our city employees who do a ton for our city. I mean, any city, they do a ton for the city, right? And so we have a code of conduct in place. Now, that code of conduct doesn't just come out of us wanting to do the right thing. That is very much a part of it. But in the past, we had a city council where um, a city councilor consistently attacked a fire chief. And that fire chief ended up settling with the city because a hostile work environment was created. So the code of conduct really grew out of the necessity because there are maybe city councils who don't quite understand what the modern workplace looks like, even within the government, right? So when Councilmember Morrison began to publicly attack city staff, especially the city manager, there's a duty and a responsibility for us as a city council who actually governs to protect our employees. A, it's the right thing to do. B, as I pointed out earlier, there's a cost to it. We could literally be sued if we don't um, create an environment that employees feel safe in. So the censure really came out of him violating that code of conduct and speaking ill publicly of employees. We have a protocol in place. If you have issues with employees, you speak of that to either the city manager or you make a complaint to the city council and then we'll deal with it. Or you can do that through a performance review, right? And for our city manager has an annual performance review. So for us, it was very much protecting our city, protecting our employees, making sure our employees feel like they can come to work in a safe work environment. And that's really what the censure came out of. At least the second censure. He has been censured before,
Okay.
and that had nothing to do with our city council. He was censured the first time for sexual harassment. That had nothing to do with our council. So I would just point out that there's a pattern here, but we didn't necessarily start this pattern with our current city council. We were really responding to the issues that were put in front of us. The last thing I'll say was this is not something that our city council sought out. This was triggered by an employee complaint. So if an employee complains, then we have to handle that complaint.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, thank you for that clarification. What's given the current housing market trends, what initiatives are being taken to ensure affordable housing for residents in Brooklyn Park?
Yeah, I would expand that
Okay.
to say that Brooklyn Park has our fair share of naturally affordable occurring housing. There is some affordable housing that's coming up along 85th, but I would challenge people to look at our city from an economic perspective. Brooklyn Park has 5.5, well, Bloomington, which is one spot up or two spots up from us in terms of size. They have $5.5 billion of commercial property development. Brooklyn Park has 2 billion. That's a $3.5 billion gap. So if you look at what we have in terms of a tax base, in terms of tax revenue, right? Whatever we can't cover, whatever needs we have that we can't cover through that lack of a commercial property, that falls onto uh, property owners in Brooklyn Park. They have to pay that difference, and whatever difference they can't pay, right, due to that lack of business development we have, then we just can't offer those services. So we have more than our fair share of affordable housing, and we are looking more to create. We have a biotech district that we're creating. We're looking to bring more workforce housing. We're looking to bring more market rate housing to help close that commercial gap. And I think what we're doing along 85th, as far as we're concerned, I think is enough. The other piece I will say is that, well, there's two more pieces. The other piece I'll say is within our within our laws, right? Any development that comes that uses our land as a city, right? Our EDA owned land or land of that nature. There's a requirement that, and it might be for apartments in general, there's a requirement that a certain portion be affordable. It's on a sliding scale. So there's 30% AMI, 60% AMI, 80% AMI, right? And it's a sliding scale of what we have to present. So everything that comes in, there has to be some portion of affordable um, housing. So we have that in place. But I would also say it's not about Brooklyn Park really doing more affordable housing. Before affordable housing was the thing to do, Brooklyn Park was doing affordable housing. It's really about other cities picking up the slack. I'd say Minneapolis has done their fair share. St. Paul has done their fair share. Brooklyn Center has done their fair share, right? I would say look at some of the other surrounding suburbs. Look at Eden Prairie. Look at Minnetonka. Look at Wayzata. Look at some of these other areas and say, what are you doing in terms of affordable housing? Because it shouldn't rest disproportionately on certain cities.
Okay, good, good. How do you? I'm going to keep it where the public needs area here. How do you rate your public transit connectivity for the city of Brooklyn Park right now? And are there any upcoming transportation infrastructure projects that you have planned for the city?
Not that we have planned, because a lot of that relies on county dollars or state dollars, federal dollars. What I will say is that we are not happy with the state of public transportation, not only in our city but in the North Metro or Northwest Metro specifically. So for us, there's not a lot of east to west um, transportation. So right, folks can't get east to west easily, and then we have places. If we talk about kind of along the Zane corridor with like Huntington Place, right? Some of them are locked in because there's not easy to access transportation. One of the good things that is coming that we are very much supporting is the light rail is going to be coming up that Botno area. So we support that, because what we're hearing from um, uh, Met Council and I want to say Metro Transit is that once that is established, then bus lines will be established that offer that east to west. And the reason that's important is we want people to get north to south, east to west, so that they can access jobs and opportunities within our city.
Okay, are they going to be coming down 52 in that area? On the way down 52, where the old movie theater used to be over there?
Um, 52. I don't. I know about now, but I don't know the 52 area that you're. I could be off though. I could just be not
Yeah,
seeing
when
it.
you're coming straight off 94 and you go
Hmm.
straight, don't it turn into 52 going there?
When you're going straight off
When you
94,
go to 94?
252.
252.
No, no, no. Sorry, it's not going to be off 252. So 250 is on the 252 is on the complete other side. It's going to be off the bot now. So if you go to 94 and you take it all the way to 81, yeah, 81 or that West Broadway
Over
area,
that way.
that highway that comes up that way, that would be where they're going to run some of that
Light rail.
that light rail for us. Yeah.
Good, good. What are your main strategies for boosting economic growth in Brooklyn Park? And are there plans to attract new businesses to the area?
I think that's one of our biggest focuses. I mean, number one focus is always going to be public safety. I don't know always, but it's for most cities, it's public safety. That's just the responsibility of the city. But I think we are realizing that many of the outcomes that residents struggle with in Brooklyn Park are tied to economic opportunities. So I gave you that metric about how we compare to a Bloomington, right? That's also speaking to, lack to access jobs, right? And we know that if you don't have economic opportunity or you grow up below kind of the poverty line, there are educational outcomes and public safety outcomes that come from that. So for us, it's important to address. When we look at Brooklyn Park, one of the things that makes us unique is that we have 700 acres of undeveloped land. And so we have said, because we lie along the 610 corridor, that 169 610 corridor, there's medical alley lies along that. So Boston Scientific, Medtronic, Olympus, Takeda, some of these big companies in the biotech and med device space lie along there. So we have designated 200 acres of that for a biotech district, and we were blessed to go to the legislature this year, and they allowed us to carve that 200 acres out as a biotech district, which means we're getting like port authority, which means we can do more in terms of bonding and bringing other opportunities to the city. We're also given $1 million for workforce development, which we'll use to connect people to that. But our real goal is to really bring more of those businesses that we just talked about to that biotech corridor. So we're working on that in conjunction with Medical Alley, who works with a ton of those medical device companies. We're also part of the Greater MSP has an initiative out, a federal grant out, and that grant is to the request that they're putting in for is for a MedTech 3.0. So we know that MedTech 2.0, again, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, so many of these others, MedTech 2.0 is really what's helped bring a lot of this quality of life that many people experience in Brooklyn Park. Maybe not all communities, but a lot of communities in Brooklyn Park. Well, the state has said we're going to do 3.0. There's a grant at the federal level. We're the only city that is listed in that second round of the grant to be a part of that, as a partner to that. So we want to play in that space.
Okay. You talked about public safety.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move towards police reform. What steps is the city taking to address police reform to ensure community trust in law enforcement? And then what measures are being implemented to improve community relations?
So I see them as kind of the same. The community relationship has improved with our police. I can't remember the last survey, but a recent survey said that more folks trust our police. And to me, I think it's less about reform. I think reform gives a lot of people jobs, a lot of opportunities, but I think it's about the infrastructure that you put in place. And so we've done two things. Um, One, we have an alternative response team, which consists of a social worker and mental health worker. And so they go out in situations where maybe in the past we would send a police officer, say a mother is dealing with a recalcitrant child who's just arguing. Well, instead of sending the police out now, that unit goes out. We've seen a lot of success with that. It de-escalates the situation. The kid doesn't enter into the legal system. The family gets the resources they need. So that's one thing, and people are really raving about that program within our city. The second thing is when we had the ARPA dollars that came from the federal level, we used that for violence interruption. And so that's where we deploy people that have a skill set in terms of dealing with the community. They would go out into areas that are experiencing more crime and they would build relationships with the community and de escalate crime. So rather than have that go to an outside vendor, we're actually bringing that in house and we're going to give it more resources than it's had in the past. But it'll also allow us to reach out to youth that are struggling in advance because when we had an outside vendor, if the police had information on the youth, they couldn't share it. We can share that and we can get ahead of youth dealing with those issues. I think the third thing outside of that infrastructure is, I have a lot of faith in our police chief, Mark Bruley, in terms of the culture that he's implemented. So other cities have gone to war at city council because they said, hey, listen, we don't want, I forget what they call these stops, but, kind of these unwarranted stops where they say, hey, look, your tail light is out. Your tail light's out. Now we're going to do a search and all that, right? Our police department years ago said that does not build trust with the community. That is not how you get ahead of crime in the community. And you don't get the intelligence you need to really solve the real issues. So culturally, our police department doesn't do that. In fact, our new, we have 17 cadets that are actually on deck. So we're actually beginning to recruit from within our city. 17 cadets we have on deck, and about 10 of those are cadets of color. So we're doing the cultural work, but we also have to have the infrastructure. And so we're doing both of those.
Education. In what ways is the city working to support local schools and improve educational outcomes for students?
Yeah, I think there's room for improvement there, right? I think the way we look at it is after school programming, we assist with that through our community activity center and providing program there. We have a teen center, which we are going to be expanding, more basketball programs, more youth mentor programs. There's a division of labor in politics that sometimes we overlook. I think we're doing a good job in those areas. We could do better. I think much of that relies on the school board in terms of the policies that they implement. I think it's incredibly important for people to also realize, though, that educational outcomes are very much tied to economic opportunities and outcomes. And so I think where we can help most as a city is providing an environment that brings the business and those economic opportunities, so that rather than a mother working two jobs or a night shift job, right? She has an opportunity to work the one job, spend time with the kids, right? And then the father uh, can also help with the children, or they're working. You got those two incomes, right? They can focus a lot more on what the children need. So for us, that's very much our focus.
I think you moved right into the next part of that question, which was what programs or initiatives are being developed to engage the youth and provide them with constructive or employment opportunities for like the summer months.
So there's a lot going on, but I would say the teen center, which is off of Zanewood, right? We're looking to expand that and provide more programming, whether it's basketball, whether it's a youth mentor, community activity center. We are in the process of determining. There's some ice rinks up there. We want to add some basketball courts, so we're in the process of determining the funding around that. We also have a program, Brooklink, which we were able to procure some funding for. So we went to the Capitol this year, and we got about $1 million allocated for workforce development. Some of those dollars will probably go towards bolstering that program. But what that program does is it works with youth. So it builds out relationships with different schools, different after school programs. Youth who are interested, it connects them with jobs for companies in the city, right? And so we're increasingly beginning to look at the manufacturing sector, because that's growing in Brooklyn Park. Some of these manufacturing jobs, graduate from high school, you're making 50, 60K, right? Out of high school. So we're looking to get them in that pipeline a lot sooner, and we're looking to really grow that program. We would love to 10x it. I think it's probably a few $100,000 now. It'd be nice if over the next 5 to 10 years we can 10x it, because I think that's how we really create a school to work pipeline, is through programming like that.
Okay. Let's talk about environmental green spaces. Does the city have a green initiative? And do you plan to expand green spaces and parks for community use?
I think I'm not a subject matter expert on this, but I would say that yes, in terms of emerald ash borer, we have a huge program. That's just been a big issue in our city in terms of those trees getting hit. We have a program that addresses that. Um, we worked heavily with Three Rivers. There's a large regional park in our area. We work with them to procure some funding, not this session, but last session, to grow that space out. And then we're always looking to add trails to our system. So that's incredibly important. I think the other piece is that 700 acres of land, much of that we have zoned in terms of saying it's going to be much more walkable. And so as we have people develop that, part of what we're going to require is there's got to be room for some green spaces here, so that as people go to this restaurant or they walk across the street to go shopping, right? There's plenty of green space to keep this green. I think one of the areas we can improve in is that the way the city was developed was um, below 85th was developed first. So not all of that was in mind. So how can we bring more of that to below 85th as we also build more of it above that 93rd?
Okay. Now, I know you have a growing immigrant population in
hmm
Brooklyn Park. Are there any specific programs or policies in place to welcome and support immigrant communities in Brooklyn Park?
I would say that it's more so um, we leave a lot of that to, if people come to us for grants, we will provide grants. Like there's certain folks who look for programming for after school programs, right? Or there may be specific housing issues that they're dealing with in their community. So sometimes I think we can get carried away as a government saying we have the best solutions in terms of doing this. I prefer to work with people who are subject matter experts within their own community. I think the culture and nature of Brooklyn Park is such that I want to say 25% of our city is immigrant, right? And so, in terms of the culture on the streets, in terms of the restaurants and things that people can do, much of that is already embedded in our city in a way that maybe, I don't want to pick any niche, but other cities would not necessarily have, because they don't have the restaurants, they don't have the shopping, they don't have the nonprofits that have grown up around that, right? But where we can, if we have funding, we try to support programs to assist with that.
Okay.
And much of our youth programming is also fully embedded into, and we're trying to get better at this, better and better at it, but into leaders within immigrant communities as well.
Okay, now you touched on this just a little bit. What are the current challenges faced by Brooklyn Park today, and how will you address them?
I think most of it stems from economic. So when I say that, so to back up a little bit, when we talk about tax revenue, which allows us to do what we need to do as a city, the easiest way I can tell people is that to explain it to them is that 55-60% of our budget is taken up by public safety. It should be around 30 to 40%. Now, it's not because we're overspending. It's not because we have a ton of crime. Crime is actually going down. It is because our budget isn't that big, right? So then public safety takes up a large portion of it. Well, that affects youth programming, that affects jobs programs, senior programs, right? Beautifying certain aspects of the city. So the way to do that is the tax base is comprised of two things. It's really the commercial, the businesses, and then secondarily, it's going to be the homeowners or people who own condos or people who own businesses or property out there. Well, if we don't have a ton of the commercial, right, it all falls to the property owner. So for us, it is how do we grow this economic base so that we can invest in the programming that we want. And we believe if we grow the economic base, that affords the city the ability to do what it wants, but it also gives people who have not had opportunities, whether that's African American, whether that is immigrant, whether it's Hmong, whether it's white folks from working class background who have been shut out, right? It gives people an opportunity to move up economically. And to me, I would rather give people an economic opportunity to do something than the myriad of programs we throw at people where we look and we say 20, 30 years later, they still have the same issues going on, whether it's health, whether it's lack of housing, right? So for me, it's we have to grow the economic pie, get people in the pipeline that haven't had access to that. And I believe a lot of these issues will take care of themselves, including public safety. But still, for public safety, we're saying we are very proactive in terms of saying we do fully fund our police department. We have the programs I talked, alternative response, the violence interruption that we talked about as well. And then we're beginning to say, in terms of that violent crime as well, because a huge component that people overlook is domestic violence. So, how do we address domestic violence, which is something that because we're building a better rapport with our police and our community, people are increasingly reporting domestic violence in a way they haven't in the past. So, we've got to find tools to address that. And that's kind of a new frontier for us. So, I would say growing economic opportunities in that tax base, and then public safety, pushing down that violent crime so that it permanently stays down.
Okay. What inspired you to enter into public service when you ran for mayor? And is that passion to serve heightened or diminished now that you're in the seat?
Um, it's heightened because I'm more aware of the issues and I have more tools at my disposal and tools that I'm learning how to use and folks around me. I would say if you've been in this game 40 years, you're still learning how to use these tools, right? But I'm constantly learning how to use these tools. New tools are coming forward, so it's heightened because um, there's more opportunity to actually address the things that I care about. I think for me, I was originally born in I was born in Illinois and born South Side area, but as a baby moved to northwest suburbs. And Harold Washington was elected when I was a kid. And so back then, you would hear people from South Side and West Side say, "Hey, our streets didn't get plowed, our garbage didn't get taken out till Harold got in office." And so he had a huge impact in me in terms of saying at the local level, more so maybe than at the state level or federal level, sometimes you can have a direct impact on people's lives that they wouldn't see because you're fighting for them at the level that actually executes the things that they care about. So for me, that's what motivated me to get involved in politics, especially at this local level.
Okay. How do you stay connected with the community to ensure that their voices are heard?
Yeah, that's increasingly, a challenge because I get pulled here and there for different meetings. I think trying to get to as many community events as I can as possible. I'm not going to outline my friends, but a lot of my friends are from the community. They're involved in the community, whether it's in organizing, whether it's a business. So I learn a lot about where folks' heads are at through my friends as well. But I think a lot of it is being involved in different events, going to those events, and then people will reach out to me on a regular basis, and then you get an understanding of what's going on there. So I think those are the three ways, and then the other way is for me it's remembering my roots. And my parents were both corporate. However, my grandparents, some of them came from sharecropping roots, right? They came from Little Rock, Arkansas. Another was Mississippi. So remembering that no matter what I'm doing, I'm coming from humble roots, not that far back, kind of keeps me in check.
Mr. Mayor, it's your mic. You got 2 minutes to speak on anything that I haven't spoke on.
I don't know. I think we've talked on a lot of. I will say this. I think there's a huge opportunity with Brooklyn Park. We are 60% people of color. I think 35% of that's African heritage. A ton of that is African immigrant, Liberian, Nigerian, Oromo, Somali, Kenyan. A large part is African American as well. 20%, we are Southeast Asian. The majority of that is Hmong or Lao. And then we have a growing Latino population. And we have, white folks who have been there for quite some time, or a lot of white folks who are moving there as well. So we really are the American experiment. We're going where America is going. And so Brooklyn Park represents very much an opportunity and a challenge. And, the challenge is you've got all these different cultures. How do we get everybody on the same page? The opportunity is that America has always spoken through opportunity and economic opportunity. So if we are able to create economic opportunities for everybody within Brooklyn Park, I think we can create a culture where folks are able to very much get along, believe in one another, and understand the value that they offer. The other thing I'll say is this: is that Brooklyn Park, sometimes people want to give us a bad rap for certain things, and I would say, well, many of those outcomes are tied directly to the economic opportunities that are given, and so rather than looking at those outcomes, look at the underlying factors, and we have an opportunity to address that in Brooklyn Park with 700 acres of undeveloped land. And so I'm excited about that opportunity. And so we are laser focused on bringing that opportunity, which we think is very much is in line with what America has always stood for.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Appreciate you for coming.
All right. Thanks.
Yes, sir.